very nearly got scammed on an independent design contract. Consumers are on the alert for fraudulent transactions, so scammers are trying to get more clever about it. And hey, I could use the extra money, so I decided to cautiously entertain this cold outreach. Cold outreaches are few and far in between, especially with so many applications now that can facilitate your needs. But that's not to say that they're an immediate red flag. In fact, one of my highest paying contracts was a cold outreach from a client. Then again, I've seen enough scams to be cautious, so guided by experience and using discretion, I responded to the request. One reason I will be hesitant to accept contracts is when the client references one of my more outdated online portfolios. As was the case in this example, it wasn't an automatic deal breaker just yet, but it did make me suspicious. We got to discussing the project via email. Word to the wise, this is exactly why seasoned and successful designers will tell you to have at the very least a phone conversation before moving forward. The details were informal, but oddly divulging about the personal aspect of their business than necessary. But hey, some people are talkative, right? Still not a deal breaker just yet, although bear in mind little details like these are still suspicious. I accepted the project scope within the required time frame under the provision of a 50% non-refundable deposit. Standard practice and ensures the contractor at least some pay for their efforts should the later stages go south. This is when things got weird. After the client signed my contract, I proceeded to send the invoice for the deposit. I accept multiple secure forms of online payment. So then why? Why would they suggest an alternative form of payment, such as a check? Now, I don't have a problem with checks. I've been paid with them before, but it was still suspicious. I mean, who doesn't have a bank card these days? Now, I went ahead and told them that I was willing to accept the payment method as I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're using an antiquated credit union or something. Scanning checks using digital bank apps these days is a thing, so as long as it went through, it would be fine. Weirder yet, the client then proceeded to ask me if I would pay their printer on their behalf if they sent me a check with the total amount for myself, plus the printer from which I could deduct my deposit, giving the reason that their printer only accepted PayPal or Venmo. This was definitely an instance in which I would put my foot down, and which brought the fraud detection meter up to 90. Who sets a printing before the artwork is done? Now, I politely declined reiterating the terms of our contract and let them know I was happy to wait if they wanted to go ahead and pay the printer first. Suddenly, the client's cousin to the rescue, so I wouldn't need to worry about the situation anymore. How convenient! Remember how I said they divulge a whole lot of personal information? This person happened to be going into emergency surgery for an injury during all of this. So it took a couple of days in which I respected the possibility that they might be legitimately recovering from surgery. But seriously though, I think I was just more interested to see what excuses they would come up with next. Then a response. The check image! Now if you're wondering if this check was legit, of course not. It was reported as fraudulent, but fret not. For my work begins only after the check is legitimately posted, so no labor was lost here. Now, in hindsight, I should have taken the time to inspect the check before even bothering to submit to my bank. And I would have noticed all the little clone stamp tool artifacts all over the image of the check, which I really didn't take the time to look over in the middle of all my multitasking at the time. It's a good lesson to anyone who's doing contract work to pause and focus on accuracy and legitimacy during the payment process of your business transaction. I did respond to the client, notifying them of the report, and at that point established that I would only be accepting the methods of payment included on the invoice, which was still valid for the rest of the week, and left it at that. Then I simply waited to see how it would all play out. And it gets better. At this point, the client proceeds to send me screenshots showing that they've sent the payment to the wrong username. And they didn't think I would notice. Now, of course, anyone who uses online payment methods knows that your broker of choice will automatically send you an email once funds are sent, even if they're not automatically available. No email. And of course, I diligently made sure to actually check my account. No transactions reported. Now, I already knew that this was fraud, but I was still curious as to what they would try next. I wrote back advising them of the discrepancies in their payment and that they should contact the broker directly to have the payment canceled and instead pay directly through my invoice. Now, at this final email, their scheme broke down. Their relative has been hospitalized. They're incurring a ton of medical debt. At least that detail made sense to their cover story. The doctors were refusing medical treatment because of those bills, which is not standard practice for emergency medical treatment in the United States, and then proceeded to ask me to pay back a portion of the non-refundable deposit that they supposedly paid to the wrong username. By this point, it was just so laughably ridiculous that I lost interest altogether. I responded stating that I would be canceling the invoice and voiding the contract due to failure to pay, and that I would no longer be offering my services to them. Then I blocked them. So what were my takeaways from this experience? One of the recommendations that I hear from top agency designers is the importance of establishing a person-to-person connection through an actual conversation. At the very least, a phone call with a verbal conversation builds a relationship with your client, and it increases the stakes of delivery for all parties involved. If you're new to the game of independent contract work, I highly recommend making this a standard condition to your business process. Second, a non-refundable deposit is often standard business practice. It's a security measure that ensures a complete transaction on behalf of everyone involved, kind of like earnest money. As you continue to build your business with repeat customers, you might find yourself comfortable giving them special exceptions, and that's okay, provided that you already have a healthy, established relationship with them. For new business, however, I don't recommend this route. New customers should be willing to pay your fees as outlined in the conditions of your contract. And whatever you do, don't begin working until you're sure the money is fully in your bank account, which means they pay and then you transfer it into your account and wait for it to post. Now, one of my biggest weaknesses is that I like to sometimes excessively give people the benefit of the doubt, which is why I initially spent so long indulging this. My philosophy of kindness, inspired by my faith in Christ, has actually resulted in some of the most successful and satisfying contracts I've ever done. That said, I've also seen enough scams to protect myself by taking certain measures from the beginning. Even so, I did learn a few things myself, especially having been in-house for so long and just recently getting back into the contract or freelance world. Security measures have changed. If you're brand new to doing contract work and finding yourself in the frustrating position of being subject to more scams than actual paid work, there are two things that I want you to remember. Now, first, you're not alone, and even the most successful creatives are preyed upon. And second, don't give up. It takes a lot of work and a long time to get this kind of business moving, even years. Most people quit because they don't see success within the first few months. And if you've been called to this venture, you will get to the place to which you're being called if you don't quit, because God cares for your career. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. You can probably see my fall decorations out a little early. I'm definitely feeling autumn vibes. Anyway, if you're new here, I also publish a monthly newsletter called Sojourner's Mark on LinkedIn. It's a faith-focused creative professionals newsletter that discusses everything from best practices to biblical applications in your career. The link is down below, and thanks again for watching.